I wanted to give a fairly raw look at this. I don't even know if it's recording right now. Apparently this is password protective. Evolution and Revolution as Organizations Grow by Larry E. Grainer. Harvard, what do you call it? Harvard officialized. Did see somewhere it was like a 1998. Management practices that work well in one phase may bring on a crisis in another. So my teach used this spoiler, and I think this is where I went wrong with writing my last essay. Alright, key executives. Key executives of a retail store chain hold on to an organizational structure long after it has served its purpose because the structure is the source of their power. Because the structure is the source of their power. The company eventually goes into bankrupt. Right? And that's highlighted. A large bank disciplines a rebellious manager who is blamed for current control problems when the underlying causes are centralized procedures and that are holding back expansion into new markets. Many young managers subsequently leave the bank, competition moves in, and profits decline. The problem at these companies are rooted more in past decisions than in present events or market dynamics. Yet management in its haste to grow often overlooks such critical development questions as has our company organization where has our organization been, where is it now, and what do the answers to these questions mean for where it is going. Instead, management fixes its gaze outwards on the environment and towards the future as if more precise market projections will provide the organization with a new identity. Oh, you're saying they try and rebrand as rather than try and fix or update their business practices, is what I believe they're saying. And stressing the force of history on the organization, I have drawn from the legacies of European psychologists who argue that the behavior of individuals is determined primarily by past events and experiences rather than by what lies ahead, extending to the thesis to the problem of organizational development. We can identify a series of development phases through which companies tend to pass as they grow. These phases begin with these each phase begins with a period of evolution with steady growth and stability and ends with revolutionary period of substantial organization, turmoil, and change. For instance, when centralized practices eventually lead to demands for centralization. When copy. What's this mean? Oi oi oi. Copy. Wow. Can I not? Centralized practice. Oh my god. I'm a nightmare. What points is rather than concentrating to a singular central authority. What? So once they start making it, they start divvying out the workload, which ends up needing to start hiring people under them. The resolution of each revolutionary period determines whether or not a company will move forward into its next stage of evolutionary growth. Company in high growth, yep. So medium growth, which is, I'm assuming, meaning slightly more targeted but open. This is super targeted, and this is for everyone. A model of how organizations develop. To date, research on organizational development has been largely empirical, and scholars have not attempted to create a model of the overall process. We, when we analyze the research, however, five key dimensions emerge. An organization's age and size is its stages of evolution and revolution, and the growth rate of its industry. The graph, how companies grow, shows how these elements interact to shape an organization's development. Yeah, size of organization, right? Age of organization, the most obvious and essential dimension of any model of development is the lifespan of an organization, represented on the graph as a horizontal axis. Sure. History shows that the same organizational practices are not maintained throughout a long lifespan. This demonstrates a most basic, outdated. Whoa, fuck. This demonstrates a most basic. Oh, there we go. Point. A managerial. Oh, what the fuck? Most basic point. Easily outdated. A most basic point. Management problems and principles are rooted in time. The concept of decentralization, for example, can describe corporate practices at one period but can lose its descriptive power at another. The passage of time also contributes to the institutionalization of managerial attitudes. As these attitudes become rigid and eventually outdated, the behavior of employees become not only more predictable but also more difficult to change. Passage of time. Repetition. You get used to a way, then can start becoming subservient, if you will. Ah, fuck. Trust me, I know the feel. I've worked enough jobs. And I hated living every single day the same. Every single day of working. Never ever tried to do it the same twice. Size of the organization. This dimension is depicted on the chart as the vertical axis. So wait, hold on. So just describing it, it's bracketed here, but not bracketed there. See, linguistically, I know how to use punctuation, but its full meaning and context is still new to me. A company's problems and solutions tend to change markedly as the number of its employees and sales volume increase. Yep. Problems of coordination and communications magnify. New functions emerge, levels in the management hierarchy multiply, and the job becomes more interrelated. Thus, time is not only determinant of structure. In fact, organizations that do not become larger can retain many of the same management issues and practices over long periods. Organizations that do not become larger can retain many of the same management issues and practices over long periods. Yeah, so they're bound to, if they're going to small or large, if they're gonna stay in the same waka, same formula, they're gonna come to the stage of crisis, if you will. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, well. As organizations age and grow, another phenomenon emerges: prolonged growth that we can term the evolutionary period, quote unquote, in ellipses, in italics. Most grown organizations do not expand for 2 years and then contract one, rather, uh, contract one. Rather, those that survive a crisis usually enjoy 4 to 8 years of continuous growth without a major economic setback or severe internal disruption. So what? Once you're busy, you've got about 4 to 8 years to enjoy it before things need a update. That's good to know. I did have this pulled up. So I'll finish off this page. No, 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 no. Just before I do forget it. There's no how you spell that. Reading. Stumble for should they never deviate from the formula that brought success. Big or small. Even look at your local fish and chip shops. Because I do think we're meant to cross-reference like this with like the different green screen and visual facts. So the
expensive and time consuming.
You could build, but
does it say what film? Being able to just chuck up a green screen and show.
Because we have learned about little tricks that were better, but because employing them had no evolution, they didn't stick around. Like how they used, if you wanted to rotoscope, you had to cut each frame out of each little, little roll of film slide. Because they stopped using rolls of film. That way of rotoscoping just didn't pop off. Anyway, employees often find stagnant business practice. Alright, 4 to 8 years. So if I manage to make a business, I got 4 years to continue to ride its wave without a major economic setback or severe internal disruption. The term evolution seems appropriate for describing these quiet periods because only modest adjustments appear to be necessary for maintaining growth under the same overall pattern of management. Boom! On the nail on the head. Smooth evolution is not inevitable or indefinitely sustainable. It cannot be assumed that organizational growth is linear. Right? Fortune's 500 list, for example, has bad considerable turnover during the last 50 years. In fact, evidence of numerous case histories reveal periods of substantial turbulence in, interspersed between uh, turbulence interspersed between smoother periods of evolution. We can determine the turbulent times periods of revolution because they typically exhibit a serious upheaval of management practices. Traditional management practices that were appropriate for a smaller size, and earlier time no longer work and are brought under scrutiny by frustration top level managers and disillusioned lower level management. Disillusioned. I'm in the call. Wait, sorry, I sort of just read that, didn't really say did it for a smaller size. I brought under scrutiny by frustration top, yeah. So they're gonna be like, yo, we need to change something, and then these cunts are gonna be like, well, I've been doing all the yelling and no legwork so far. During such periods of crisis, a number of companies fall short. Those that are unable to abandon past practices and affect major organizational changes are likely either to fold or to level out in their growth rates. True. So yeah, no bonus. The best you can get is a stalemate. The critical task for management in each revolutionary period is to find a new set of organizational practices that will become the basis for managing the next period of evolutionary growth. I guess that's where having this graph is. If you've already started a business, you would be here, right? Once you've got your business. Yep, it would make sense. Time of crisis. Revolutionary period is to find a new set of organizational practices that will become the basis for managing the next period of evolutionary growth. Interestingly enough, these new practices eventually sow the seeds of their own decay and lead to another period of revolution. Yep. So if you try and jump the shark, you're going to run into this problem a little earlier, which may in turn end up stacking problems. Managers therefore experience the irony of seeing a major solution in one period become a major problem in a later period. Growth rate of the industry. Growth rate of the industry. So just a line. The speed at which an organization experiences phases of evolution and revolution is closely related to the market environment of its industry. For example, very interesting highlighting, because I don't know what's actually meant to be important. It's very all over the place. For example, a company in a rapidly expanding market will have to add employees quickly, hence the need for new organizational structures to accommodate large staff increases is accelerated. It's team to 4, team to 2. Everyone's got a backup. Whereas evolutionary periods tend to be relatively short enough and fast-growing industries. Much longer evolutionary periods occur in mature and slow-growing industries. Short and fast-growing industry. Short. Yep. Much longer evolutionary periods occur in mature and slow-growing industries. Yeah. supermarket, clothes store, mechanic. Everyone needs a mechanic, but then the upkeep becomes expensive. Everyone can use a clothes store or the supermarket. Upkeep must be insanity. Delegation, control, yeah. So a company rapidly expanding will have to. Yep. Whereas evolutionary periods seem to be relatively short and fast growing. Industries, much longer evolutionary periods occur in mature or slow growing industries. Evolution can be prolonged and revolutions delayed profits come easily. When profits come easily. For instance, companies that make grievous errors in prosperous industries can still look good on their profit and loss statements, thus they can buy time before a crisis forces changes in management practices. The rich cunts. The aerospace industry in its highly profitable infancy is an example. Yet revolutionary periods still occur as one did in aerospace when profit opportunities began to dry up. By contrast, when the market environment is poor, the revolutions seem to be much more severe and difficult to resolve. Market environments for revolutions seem to be much more severe and difficult to resolve. Industry is highly profitable. Oh, wait, sorry. Again, I just read it, didn't even take it in. The aerospace industry in its highly profitable infancy is an example. Yet revolutionary periods still occur as one did in aerospace when profit opportunities begin to dry up. Yeah, see? Mechanics. With foregoing framework in mind, we can now examine in depth the 5 specific phases of evolution and revolution. As shown in the graph, the 5 phases of growth, each revolutionary period characterized uh, is characterized by the dominant management style used to achieve growth. Each revolutionary period is characterized by the dominant management problem that must be solved before growth can continue. So each fuck's sake, why'd you have to split it right there? Foregoing framework, as shown in the graph, the 5 phases of growth. Each evolutionary period is characterized by the dominant management style used to achieve growth. You know what? It's not that oh. Where's my, how did I click that? Where's my remote? Book. I'll never be satisfied. Had a couple periods and a couple times. So what is it? 5 phases of growth. Fuck, man, where the fuck was I for these? Size of org, age of org, young cunt, old cunt, small cunt, huge cunt. Phase 1. Phase 2. It's even put in like a engineering term. Ugh. And then question mark. Activity. Taken down by. Ugh. I've got a beta red pen. Yes, thank you. Leadership. Interesting that leadership is the resistance, the revolution. Direction. Where are we going? Autonomy. What do we look like? Autonomy. Well, finally looked pretty enough on our social media site. Who's going to be our frontman? I will, as long as I get most of them. There's control, coordination. Yeah, you can have all the money. Donation. As long as your team backs you up. The fuck is red tape? But red tape. Yeah, that's why we'll do a crossover episode. Ooh, collaboration. But then what? Back to the top! So I've read all the stages of crisis in red, just to, yeah, once I find out the fuck red tape is. It's real, characterized by the dominant management problem. Control, red tape. Red tape is that like on your marker, you must stand here and say these lines. The pattern presented in the chart seems to be typical for companies that in industries with moderate growth over a long period. Yep. Companies in faster growing industries tend to experience all 5 phases more rapidly, whereas growing slow growing industries encounter only 2 or 3 phases over many years. Sure. It is important to note that each phase is at once a result of the previous phase and a cause for the next phase. See, I was gonna say, well, I'm gonna go freelance, but it's like I'm probably gonna run into these exact same things. Freelance, I'll do it all for myself. But now I need someone who's gonna push all my stuff while I'm creating. Which is leadership. Styles and wait. For example, the evolutionary management styles in phase 3. Delegation and control. So manager versus assistant. However, eventually provokes a revolutionary crisis that is characterized by attempts to regain control over this diversity created in the increased delegation. So assistant what? Starts getting traction, and the manager is getting jealous. For each phase, managers are limited in what they can do if growth is uh, to occur. A company experiencing an autonomy crisis in phase 2 cannot return to directive management for a solution. It must adopt a new style delegation in order to move forward. Phase 1, creativity. In the birth of stages of an organization, the emphasis is on creating both a product and a market. The following are the characteristics of the periods of creative evolution. How are they going to do this point by point? Point 1. The founders of the company are usually technically or entrepreneurially oriented. Or technically, sort of entrepreneurially. And they generally disdain management activities. Their physical and mental energies are absorbed entirely by making and selling a new product. Communication among employees is frequent and informal. Yeah, locker room talk, quote unquote. Yeah, it doesn't have to be that foul. Just like, Turgy, up to? Yeah, jamming the game later? Good evening, fellow gentlemen. Might you like to partake in some PlayStation event with me tonight? We will be playing Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And then, like, you see a little pop-up hologram cited. Anyway, it's frequent and informal. Long hours of work are rewarded by modest salaries and the promise of ownership benefits. Huh. Right, yeah. So if you're going to put in work for the company, you should get a little bit of the company. I like that. Decisions and motivation are highly sensitive to marketplace feedback. Management acts as customer reaction. I can't believe I couldn't. Not unless management is actually putting their ass on the line, talking shit online. I wouldn't see anyone from HR at Pack and Save trying to back me up. Nah, fuck you asking for 400 boxes. We're only bringing 30 a day. They'd be like, oh, we'll be sure to reprimand him. Oh, fuck off. Don't miss working. All the foregoing individualistic and creative activities are essential for a company to get off the ground. Yep. But as the company grows, those very activities become the problem, of course. Longer production runs require knowledge about the efficiencies of manufacturing. Increased numbers of employees cannot be managed exclusively through informal communication. And new employees are not motivated by an intense dedication to the products or organization. Shout out here and there, it's fine. Additionally, capital must be secured and accounting procedures are needed for financial control. It's always going to be about the bloody money. The company's founders find themselves burdened with unwanted management responsibilities. They long for the good old days and try to act as they did in the past. Conflicts among harried leaders emerge and growth more intense. So is that the evolution? At this point, the crisis of leadership. Where are we? Ah, yeah. Oh, fuck. At this point, a crisis of leadership occurs, which is the onset of the first revolution. Who will lead the company out of confusion and solve the managerial problems and confronting it? Obviously, a strong manager is needed. Please tell me my voice is recording. Okay, good. Obviously, a strong manager is needed. One who has the necessary knowledge and skills to introduce new business techniques. But finding that manager is easier said than done. Yep. The founders often resist stepping aside. The founders often resist stepping aside, even though they are probably temperamentally unsuited to the job. Are probably temperamentally unsuited. Yep. So just because they did the creativity does not mean they can do the backup of talking. Ugh. So here's the first critical choice in an organization's development: to locate and install a strong business manager who is acceptable to the founders and who can pull the organization together. That chick for Xbox almost fronted as like a good cover. Alright. So that's creativity. I do want to just quickly get bathroom. Alright. Phase 2. Direction. Those companies that survive the first phase by installing a capable business manager usually embark on a period of sustained growth under able directive leadership. Here are the characteristics of this evolutionary period. A functional organizational structure is introduced to separate manufacturing from marketing activities, and job assignments become increasingly specialized. Accounting systems for inventory and purchasing are introduced. Incentives, budgets, and work standards are adopted. Communication becomes more informal and impersonal as a hierarchy of titles and position grows. The new manager and his or her key supervisors assume most of the responsibilities for instituting direction. Lower level supervisors are treated more as functional. I'm still pushing the button. Sorry. The new manager and his or her key supervisors assume most of the responsibility for instituting direction. Lower level supervisors are treated as more functional specialists than as autonomous decision-making managers. Although the new directive techniques channel employees' energy more efficiently into growth, they eventually become inappropriate for controlling a more diverse and complex organization. Low-level employees find themselves restricted by a cumbersome and centralized hierarchy. They have come to possess more direct knowledge about markets and machinery than do their leaderships at the top. Consequently, these feel torn between following procedures and taking initiative on their own. So if you actually did like a level up like system, not in the sense of like, oh, the moment you complete this task, I've done this, then you get this title, but it's just, I don't want to call it the vetting process, but it's like, just take your time to learn the process. Feels like a level up system for that. Just to be like, alright, 6 months, surely at this point I should be able to handle a custom on my own. I don't know. Just trying to read as I go. I'm trying to engage as I go. Thus, the second revolution emerges from a crisis of autonomy. The solution adopted by most companies is to move forward move toward more delegation. Yet it is difficult for top-level managers who previously were successful at being directive to give up responsibility to lower level managers. Moreover, the lower level managers are not accustomed to making decisions for themselves. Not accustomed. Yep. As a result, numerous companies founder during their founder during the revolutionary periods by adhering to centralized methods while lower level employees became disenchanted and leave the organization. So this is when you start getting all the workload without the benefits, because the benefits went up with the person who you were under. Like, I don't know, like if you were to get a new supervisor and then ask them to immediately become being with the team and then they go away, they'd always like, oh, do you know where thing is so I can ask him? Ugh. Delegation. The next era of growth evolved from the successful application of a decentralized organizational structure. It exhibits these characteristics. Much greater responsibility is given to the. Wait, hold on. So, which one are we talking about now? Direction and autonomy. Wait, what was autonomy's thing? But most companies move successful at being directive. Yeah. Delegation. Boom and control. I am curious what this red tape shit is. The next era of growth evolves from this successful application in a decentralized organizational structure. It exhibits these characteristics. Much greater responsibility is given to the manager of plants and market territories. Profit centers and bonuses are used to motivate employees. Top-level executives at headquarters limit themselves to managing by exception based on periodic reports from the field, right? So that's when they're like, you know what, y'all have been doing good. We're not gonna be floating over you. Sure. But I mean, you can't just jump to that point. Management often concentrates on acquiring outside enterprises that can be lined up with other decentralized units. Expansion, sure. Communication from the top is infrequent and usually occurs by correspondence, telephone, or brief visits to local or to field locations. Sure. So is that one that stops being, oh, sorry, we can't be friends now for the sake of business? Like us not yarning is like a good thing. The delegation phase allows companies to expand by means of the heightened motivation of managers at lower levels. Managers in decentralized organizations who have greater authority and incentives are able to penetrate larger markets, respond faster to customers, and develop new products. A serious problem eventually emerges, however, as top-level executives sense that they are losing control over highly diversified field operation. Autonomous field managers prefer to run their own shops without coordinating plans, money, technology, and personnel with the rest of the organization. Freedom breeds a parochial attitude. I didn't even know where the paroch part stemmed from. Soon the organization falls into crisis of control. The Phase 3 revolution is underway when the top management seeks to regain control over the company as a whole. Seeks to regain Some top management teams attempt to return to centralized management, which usually fails because of the organization's newly vast scope of operations. Those companies that move ahead find a new solution in the use of special coordination techniques. And now we're at, so that was control. Delegation versus control. It's actually hilarious. Boom, 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 boom. Alright. Collaboration and red tape. Interesting. Wait, what? Yeah, delegation control. Delegation. The delegation phase brings a new period of growth, but freedom eventually breeds a... yeah. Right, so these are just rehashes. The evolutionary period of the coordination phase is characterized by the use of formal systems for achieving greater coordination and by top-level executives taking responsibility for the initiation and administration of these new systems. For example, decentralized units are merged into product groups. Formal planning procedures are established and intensively reviewed. Numerous staff members are hired and located at headquarters to initiate company-wide programs of control and review for line managers. Alright. This is starting to get serious. Capital expenditures are carefully weighed and parceled out across the organization hard. Don't just give it all to the top cunts. Each product group is treated as an investment center where return on investment capital is an important criterion used in allocating funds. Each product group. Stock options and company-wide profit sharing are used to encourage employees to identify with the organization as a whole. Okay. So by the time you get to coordination, that's when you want to start asking your guys. Stock options, yeah. All these new coordination systems prove useful for achieving growth through the more efficient allocation of the company's limited resources. The systems prompt field managers to look beyond the needs of their local units, although these managers still have a great deal of decision-making responsibility. They learn to justify their actions more carefully to watchdog audience at headquarters. A lack of confidence, however, gradually builds between line and staff and between headquarters and the field. Yeah, that's the inside staff versus the outside. The many systems and programs introduced begin to exceed their usefulness. A red tape crisis is in full swing. Line managers, for example, increasingly resent the direction from those who are not familiar with the local conditions. And staff, for their part, complain about uncooperative and uninformed line managers. Together, both groups criticize the bureaucratic system that has evolved. Procedures take precedence over problem solving and innovation dims. In short, the organization has become too large and complex to be managed through formal programs and rigid systems. The Phase 4 revolution is underway. Oh, okay. So collaboration within the work, not with another workplace. That seems like it came back to that buying up enterprises, whatever that was. Be over here. All right. Yeah. So it's just the cunts who have to work, who get to work in the nice AC offices, then have to feel half the environmental temperature as yeah, yeah, I know those feels. HR versus just part-time employee differences in office. The last observable phase emphasizes strong interpersonal collaboration in an attempt to overcome the red tape crisis. Where phase 4 was managed through formal systems and procedures, phase 5 emphasizes spontaneity and management actions through team and skillful confrontation of interpersonal differences. Social control and disciplines replace formal control. Fuck, this is just all of this. I see this coming back to a factory job I had. Paintballing was the thing that they did for spontaneity and confrontation of interpersonal differences. Social control and self-discipline replace formal control. Sure. This transition is especially difficult for the experts who created the coordination system as well as the line managers who relied on formal methods for answers. The Phase 5 evolution then builds around a more flexible and behavioral approach to management. Here are its characteristics. The focus is on solving problems quickly through team action. Teams are combined across functions to handle specific tasks. Staff experts at headquarters are reduced in numbers, assigned and combined into interdisciplinary teams that consult with, not direct, field units. Yeah, see? Paintballing. A matrix type structure is frequently used to assemble the right teams for the appropriate problems. Formal control systems are simplified and combined into single multi-purpose systems. Conferences of key managers are held frequently to focus on major problems. Educational programs are used to train members in behavioral skills for achieving better teamwork and conflict resolution. Real-time information systems. Real-time information systems are integrated into daily decision-making processes. Economic awards are geared more to team performance than to individual achievement. Shout a feed. Whoever wins gets a pizza. Experimenting with new practices is encouraged throughout the organization. Can't just run paintball every year. What will be the revolution in response to this stage of evolution? Many large US companies are now in the Phase 5 evolutionary stage, so the answer is critical. Although there is a little clear evidence regarding the outcome, I imagine that the revolution arising from the question mark crisis will... Wait, what? Oh, right. Right. Question mark. I forgot it was attached to collaboration. Center around the psychological saturation of employees who grow emotionally and physically exhausted from the intensity of teamwork and the heavy pressure for innovative solution. My hunch is that the Phase 5 revolution will be solved through the new structure and programs that allow employees to periodically rest, reflect, and revitalize themselves. We may physical, yeah. We may even see companies with dual organizational structures, a habit structure to getting the daily work done, and a reflective structure for stimulating new perspective and personal enrichment. Employees could move back and forth between the two structures as their energies dissipate and are refueled. One European organization has implemented just such a structure. 5 reflective groups have been established outside the company's usual structure for the purpose of continuously evaluating 5 task activities basic to the organization. The group report directly to the manager director, although their findings are made public throughout the organization. Membership in each group includes all levels and functions in the company, and employees are rotated through the groups every 6 years. Sure. 6 months. It sounds fairly neat. Must be a big ass team. Other concrete examples now in practice include providing sabbaticals for employees, moving managers in and out of hotspot jobs, establishing a 4-day work week, ensuring job security, building physical facilities for relaxation during the workday, making jobs more interchangeable, creating an extra team on the assembly line so that one team is always off for re-education, right? And switching to longer vacations and more flexible work hours. The Chinese, wait, sorry, I just want to see what these are. Revolution is still inevitable, of course. The Chinese practice of requiring executives to spend time periodically on the low-level jobs may be worth a non-ideological evaluation. For too long, U.S. management has assumed that careers progress should be equated with an upward path toward title, salary, and power. Could it be that some vice presidents of marketing might just long for and even benefit from temporary duty in the field sales? It's insane how much difference that just does. As someone who's always on the floor, I'd rather be there. I'm not exactly great at paperwork. Let me now summarize some important implications for practicing managers and for practicing managers. The main features of this discussion are depicted in the table organization practices in the 5 phases of growth, which shows the specific management actions that characterize each growth phase. These actions are also the solutions that ended each preceding revolutionary periods. In one sense, I hope that many readers will react to my model by seeing it as obvious and natural for depicting the growth of an organization. To me, this type of reaction is a useful test of the model's validity. But at a more reflective level, I imagine some of these reactions come more from hindsight than from foresight. Experienced managers who have had through a developmental sequence can identify that sequence now, but how did they react when in the midst of a stage of evolution or revolution? They can probably recall the limits of their own developmental understanding at that time. Perhaps they resisted desirable changes or were even swept emotionally into the revolution without being able to propose constructive solutions. So let me offer some explicit guidelines for managers of growing organizations to keep in mind. Alright, wait. I know this cunt is fucking Harvard, but like, is are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to make the calls of like, nah, fuck, this is the chart we're going to all follow now? Because, I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. My teach uses it, and man literally runs everything. Beautiful dude you can just always go and talk to. And the fact that, like, he seems to follow this positively. He's the dude who would help you see, who you would see at this point, and then it loop back around. Right. Know where you are in the developmental sequence. Every organization and its components are at different stages of development. The task of top management is to be aware of stages, otherwise it's not recognized when the time for change has come, or or it may act to impose the wrong solution. Sure. Leaders at the top should be ready for work with the flow of the tide rather than against it. Yet they should be cautious because it is tempting to skip phases out of impatience. Sure. Each phase produces certain strengths and learning experiences in the organization that will be essential for success in subsequent phases. A child prodigy, for example, may be able to read like a teenager, but he cannot behave like one until he matures through a sequence of experiences. Sure. I also doubt that managers can or should act to avoid revolutions. Rather, these periods of tension provide the pressure, ideas, and awareness that afford a platform for change and the introduction of new practices. So you sort of need turmoil to evolve. Recognize the limited range of solutions. In each revolutionary stage, it becomes evident that the stage can come to a close come to a close only by means of certain specific solutions. Moreover, these solutions are different from those that were applied to the problems of the preceding revolutions. Are different from those that were applied. Yeah. So you can't get to paintball stage if you just if it's only going to be the tough fellas versus the indoors. You have to be willing to like split into teams. I don't know. Trying to relate it, but I've got pack and save at the start of this graph and my factory job at the end of it, just because they handled long-term work habits very well. In each revolutionary stage, it becomes different from those that were applied from the preceding revolution. Too often, it is tempting to choose solutions that were tried before, but that actually make it impossible for the new phase of growth to evolve. Yep. Management must be prepared to dismantle current structures before the revolutionary stage becomes too turbulent. Top-level managers, realizing that their own managerial styles are no longer appropriate, may even have to take themselves out of leadership positions. A good a good phase 2 manager facing phase 3 might be wise to find a position at another phase 2 organization that fits his or her talents, either outside the company or with one of its newer subsidiaries. Oh my god. Finally, evolution is not an automatic affair. It's not an automatic affair. It is a contest for survival. To move ahead, companies must uh, consciously introduce plan structures that not only solve a current crisis but also fit the next phase of growth. That requires considerable self-awareness on the part of top management as well as great interpersonal skills in persuading other managers that change is needed. Fuck yes, that middle ground. Realize that solutions breed new problems. Managers often fail to recognize that organizational solutions create problems for the future, such as when the decision to delegate eventually causes a problem of control. Actions in the past determine much of what will happen to a company in the future. An awareness of this effect should help managers evaluate company problems with a historical understanding instead of pinning the blame on a current development. It should place managers in a position to predict problems and thereby to prepare solutions and coping strategies before a revolution gets out of hand. Top management that is aware of the problems ahead could well decide not to expand the organization. Sure. Managers may, for instance, prefer to retain the informal practices of a small company, knowing that this way of life is inherent in the organization's limited size, not in their congenial personalities. If they choose to grow, they may actually grow themselves out of the jobs and way out of way of life they enjoy. Sure. And what about very large organizations? Can they find new solutions for continued evolution? Or are they reaching a stage when the government will act to break them up because they are too large? Clearly, clearly there is still much to learn about process of development in organizations. The phases outlined here are merely 5 in number and are still only approximations. Researchers are just beginning to study the specific development problems of structure, control, rewards, and management style in different industries and in a variety of cultures. One should not, however, wait for conclusive evidence before educating managers to think and act for a developmental perspective. The critical dimension of time has been missing for too long from our management theories and practices. The intriguing paradox is that by learning more about history, we may do a better job in the future. Alright, Mr. Harvard guy. Mr. What, Lee Gainer? So I'm assuming he's saying because we've only ever tested its height and profitability as an industry, we've never questioned like at what points did they stumble and how did they overcome that.
Did you see Corridor Digital's new?
Practical is better, right? In years.
Did you see Corridor Digital's new? The green screen one? Yeah, it's cool, eh? It's yeah, crazy. Yeah. So saying there is Corridor Crew have are kind of using a lot of machine learning to teach an AI how to key green screen. And it's pretty monumental. I love how they like just generated their own solutions for green screen and proper key. So yeah, it's so good. I love it.
Why NoFX is a marketing tool. NoFX. So trying to go organically.
Not coming up. Am I asking the right question? Arabic.
Well, I guess it really depends on who we're
That's
talking
the
about.
one, I think.
Despite
Yeah,
the visual.
Maybe we'll work that.
This is my team, and we get everything done with Monday.com. Sarah is a senior project manager, and she has
visual effects credits being longer than ever before. If you are to believe the filmmakers, they're also using less CGI than ever before.
No one else in the world is doing this level of practical filmmaking, and it may never be done again.
Everybody loves practical filmmaking, so that's what the studios are giving you.
Aviation film like this has never been done, and chances are will never be done again.
It's very important to me that it be practical.
One of these days, they're gonna put no CGI was used in the making of this film in the credits, right above no animals were harmed in the making of this film, because that's how important it is for them that you know that they used no CGI. Hi there, my name is Jonas and I've been making visual effects for film and TV for 18 years, and in this 4-part video series we'll be taking a look at all the no CGI there is in Hollywood films today. And that is a lot of no CGI. So stick around, it'll be a lot of fun, and I'm saving the best for last. Before we start, let's get one thing straight. It's fairly easy to agree we all like practical better, isn't it? Ignore the music and take a look at these car stunts. Now compare them to these car stunts.
They ignored the man.
These car stunts are meant to be impressive because the car jumps a really long distance, but the two bridge stunts were real and the two building to building stunts were CGI. So what's impressive about that? A CGI car can jump as far as you want it to. It can jump from house to house, from skyscraper to skyscraper, from city to city. Hell, it could even fly into space. But that doesn't impress me because I know CGI cars can do anything. So practical is better, right? It's not so simple. Hang on. Top Gun Maverick blew people away with its practical approach to filming dogfights where everyone else uses CGI. Tom Cruise, director Joseph Kosinski, DOP Claudio Miranda worked closely with aerial photographer Kevin LaRosa to film everything for real.
That's ground photography, mounted camera platforms, whether they're internal or external on the F-18s, we used both. It's helicopter and it's jet to jet.
And this is crazy stuff. It has never been done before and it looks amazing.
Top Gun is a movie about getting it in camera.
And there is not a single mention of CGI or visual effects in any of these documentaries.
This is not just green screen nonsense.
And why would there be? Tom himself said in a 2015 interview,
a possibility of a Top Gun 2, am I hearing that? Is this happening?
This. Well, we got to do all the jets practical. No CGI in the jets. I'm saying right now, no CGI in the jets.
That's it. No CGI on the jets.
I've heard it, yeah.
Social media was flooded by people raving about the complete absence of CGI in such a major spectacle film. News outlets and media like IGN were quick to pick up the story and report on it like this.
In an age where computer-generated special effects reign supreme in cinema, Top Gun Maverick is a Mach 10 breath of fresh air.
Production company Skydance even tweeted no CGI here to confirm, I presume, that there is no CGI in the film. But with 400 VFX names in the credits, that's a lot of no CGI, isn't it? It turns out a lot of the aircraft they filmed practically were not the aircraft you see in the final film. Instead, they filmed these L-39 stand-in jets, painted them grey, and added tracking markers so they could be used for lighting reference and tracked, essentially using them as a flying anti-circus to be completely replaced with CGI. So how many jets are CGI and how many are real? The Darkstar was made available to the production as a full-size mock-up, but it didn't fly, so it's completely CGI, either tracked onto a stand-in jet or animated by hand. The good old F-14 doesn't fly anymore, it's all CGI. The enemy's 5th generation fighters, they don't exist. They're all CGI, either tracked onto other stand-in jets or animated by hand. Which means that in the entire dogfight at the end of the movie, you're watching 100% CGI airplanes because none of these planes exist.
No CGI in the jets.
There's no information about this in the bonus material on the Blu-ray or in any of the online documentaries about the film, but the film's editor Eddie Hamilton has uploaded a walkthrough of the film's timeline on YouTube and he's pretty open about the visual effects.
The edit notes track is something where I cap on and I type in useful things that the VFX department might need to know.
And there you have it. The entire dogfight at the end of the film is filmed and edited exclusively with these grey L-39 jets, with notes from the editor to the VFX team about which CGI jets to replace them with.
You know, there's a lot of visual effects in this movie, and you may not realize what the visual effects are because they're kind of invisible.
The F-18s were made available to the production from the Navy, and they are somewhat real in the film, but VFX supervisor Ryan Tudhope would say in an interview with VFX Voice, typically we shot those with 1 or 2 F-18s and added the other F-18s in those formations. And that means that in all these shots you're watching some real F-18s and some CGI F-18s, and I can't tell you which is which because you can't tell the difference. In the shot where they all come through the valley and the vapor trails are going off and rush under the camera, that was one jet, and we added multiple jets doing the same thing. They also used CGI jets for safety reasons when jets get too close to each other. Toto would also explain to Ian Fales from Befores and Afters, we determined early on through various tests that adding other jets in formation out of the canopy windows was something we could do convincingly in VFX. further reducing the already very small amount of real jets left in the film. But what about the cockpit scenes? They're real, we saw them film that, didn't we? Yes, they filmed all that stuff for real, and it's amazing, it looks great, and they got some G-force stuff that they couldn't have gotten any other way. But they still did CGI.
I feel like I'm still missing the point, like, this isn't business stuff, but still the make of it? I don't know, I think I'll leave that there for now.